This is my daily driver Ghost, and it is time to do some major service. I really need to upgrade the brakes, so I've got some braided steel brake lines to put on the front end. To do that, you kind of have to move the radiator out of the way. The further out of the way it is, the better. So I need to change the radiator fluid anyway. My rear brake disc is shot. I've got new pads front and rear. As long as I'm doing that, I'm going to check the valves. That's the main thing, but I'm also going to clean out the air filter and just sort of check everything over. Give it all a once over. So tonight I'm going to start taking the thing apart and see how far I get. So I just finished the bulk of my edit on this video. Woof, it's a long one. In hindsight, maybe I should have broken it down into some more bite-sized chunks. But since I did almost all of the work over one weekend, it felt right to keep it all together. I don't expect many of you to watch it from start to finish, but I'll set up chapters and hopefully you can find the section or sections most relevant to what you need. This was a pretty monster effort on my part. It took a lot of time to film and a lot of time to edit. Obviously it isn't perfect. As a content creator, I'm still learning, but hopefully the information I'm sharing is helpful to you. If it is, please consider buying me a cup of coffee. There's a link in the description below. If you can't do that, no worries. I get it. Money is tight. It's tight on this end too. But if that's the case, then please consider the free things that you can do to help me grow the channel. Like, share, comment, subscribe. Anyway, you can see it's a lovely spring day in Seattle here. Hopefully the weather's nice where you're at and you're getting out on two wheels. Thanks for watching. Cheers. I've never actually had this whole luggage rack off since I bought the bike, but it appears that I have to take this plate off, which has 4 tiny little screws in the corners there. And then I believe I'll find some bolts underneath that. Sure enough, I have 4 bolts that are underneath here. Looks like the next thing I need is a 5mm Allen wrench for four bolts. Oh, okay. Looks like the back had a pair of spacers. The front does too, but the front are just a bit taller. Next, I'll just have these 2 quarter turn nuts to get this cross member off, and then I can get the luggage rack off. Wonder if I need to loosen others to get this one out. I was able to work that free without undoing the other ones, but it might be easier when I put it back on. If I loosen some of the other ones up, it just has to kind of get under there far enough, and then these have to slide into this hole. So it's a little bit tricky, but like I say, if I loosen up the other ones, it'll be a little easier. And you can see the mechanism they've got for fastening. It's got, the bolt has a little dowel that goes through it, and it turns quarter turn to lock into those. To get the rest of the carrier off, I just need those 2 bolts. And those are a special bolt with a spacer on them. Actually, is that? The other ones, spacer might be separate. These might just be locked together. The other side, the spacer is staying, yeah, is a separate spacer. I guess I gotta clip my zip tie. Next, I'm gonna take off the side covers. And since this bolt is already out, I really only need to take that bolt off. And then there's 2 quick clips. One is down here and the other is right here. I'll show you what those look like as soon as I get this off. These things, they often break, but they're designed to be reusable. Push it out like that, install it where it's going, and then push it flush. And when it's flush, these things are flared out, so it holds it in place. And when you want to take it off, you just push that further in and extract it, and then reset it. I may be mistaken. I may need to take that bolt off too. It's still holding on here. There we go. Yeah, so it's bolt there, bolt there, bolt here. One quick fastener right there, and the other one underneath. The other thing I should mention after you get those fasteners off is there is one of those little plastic nubs that grabs on, and a little bit of a clip on the front end that holds on. It kind of, I don't know if you can see that. That hooks under the edge of the tank right here. The next thing I'm going to do is take off this front tank cover. There's 2 more of those little clip fasteners and 2 bolts. These are also 4mm. I mentioned that these often break, and the other side it looks like the top broke off the clip on the other side. So I'm going to get something else to push that in. So maybe this 4mm will work. Nope, that's too big. It does not want to let go. I did get that one out. You can see that the top of it is broken off. It was still holding it on there. I think I've got a spare one of these somewhere, so I'll have to check. But I always hate taking this part off because it feels like I'm breaking something, but you kind of pull the plastic till it pops. And then it pulls out. The next thing to take off are our side covers. They've got a 5mm Allen and 2 4mm Allens. There's a piece of Velcro and a hook that are back there as well. So this can be a little tricky to maneuver off too, but I've done it a couple of times, and see if I can't do it again. This is the hook right there, and it slides into this tab, and there's the Velcro right there. The next thing I'm going to do is take off the front cowl, and I believe I just need to unplug this power block, but then I've also got this extra wire that's an aftermarket headlight relay, so I'll have to unplug that as well. those two bolts on the headstock, those will have to come out, and this screw on each side, which is another 4mm. With those things, it should come off, just pull off the front. I think I'm going to try and pull the cowl off first and then be able to reach those electrical connectors. Not sure what's holding on. It's supposed to just pull straight off after that. I figured out what was holding it on, and the where it attaches to the headstock, there's actually a little tab. Oh, am I still holding it? There we go. Just show this to you over here. So this right there hooks around the back of the place where it attaches to the headstock. So you can't pull it straight off. You have to go out a bit before you pull it off. These were the wiring connections I just undid, and the one for my relay is up here a little more. Don't know if you can see that. I might have to try and play with the routing on that. Make it a little easier to plug back in. Next, I'm going to take off the fuel tank. There are two bolts up here and one back here. Those are 5mm Allens, and this is a 12mm bolt. When I pull the 12 off, this piece right here will act as a stand to jack it up while I reach underneath and disconnect the fuel line. This little stand thing comes out with the front end too. That's what that front piece of plastic will clip right into that rubber piece. So before I get any further, you may have noticed that I put screws back in, not that one, where I've pulled them out in some places. So I'm going to put some of the screws back in just so I can keep track of them. Looking under the gas tank, you can see there's a quick clip disconnect for the fuel line, and then there's a vent hose and overflow hose that you got to disconnect, and then there's a wiring connection that you got to unclip as well. That's going to be hard to do while holding the phone, so I'm going to set that down while I undo those. All right, so my quick connector is off for the fuel. My fuel is unhooked. My vent line and overflow, not sure which one's which. Only one had the hose clamp on it. That's the one that goes to the back. Yeah, anyway, everything's disconnected, so I'm gonna put the camera back on the tripod and pull off the tank. Pro tip, this is always easier if you've got a fairly empty tank. It gets pretty heavy when it's full. Not impossible, just heavy. The next thing I'm going to do is drain the coolant in preparation for removing the radiator. And there's a drain plug right here. Didn't expect it to shoot out of there quite so forcefully, but that's what shop towels are for. So I'm just trying to work the hose a little bit to pump the last little bit fluid out of there, because the next step is going to be disconnecting my inlet and outlet hoses from the radiator. Looks like that's a small Phillips head. And my line to the overflow, and I'll have to disconnect the wires for the horn and the fan. So if you watch the channel much, you know that anytime I'm taking a rubber hose off, I like to spray it with a little bit of Dawn and water. Just really ends up lubricating the rubber well, helps it slide off smoothly. especially rubber parts that have been attached for a while. There's one. Go get the other side. Back on this side, I'll get the overflow hose. Yeah. That out, we got radiator or the fan. All right, the tab is down on the bottom, so I just have to push it up to pull it out. And now we'll step around to the other side and get the horn. The horn is just these two wires, the black one at the top and the orange one at the bottom. With those out of the way, I can take care of my bolts for the radiator. There's one at the bottom on the other side and one at the top, and I think this one just has a pin that hooks in. So the radiator bolts are just, there's a 10 millimeter right there, and if you come down to the bottom of the radiator, there's one right there. So I think those are the only two that need to come out. I want to be careful when I take this off because I think there are a couple of wires hooked into the back of the heat shroud that just have to be unclipped to get off of it. And I don't know how much this will want to fall off or not. All right, I'm not quite sure what's hanging on over there. Maybe if I get that stuff unclipped first. All right, well, I got most of the wires unclipped. I've got one more that's trying to be a little more difficult for me. I can't quite see how to get it. The others I was able to pinch with the needle nose pliers and get off. This one seems to want to be a little more difficult. There it goes. All right, yeah. These are all the little parts where the bits clip in. This is what the little clips look like that go into into the radiator shroud. This one was a little bit different, and I just kind of had to wiggle that one free. The next thing I have to get out of the way is my radiator reservoir tank, and so that means taking these bolts off and this one. I'm not sure why they all need to come off, but that's what the book says, and we'll get this hose wiggled off there too. Keep thinking I've got all the fluid out, and then I move something around and more starts draining. So I'm glad I left the pan under there. All right. Well, that's about as far as I'm gonna get tonight. It's just about time to go in and have dinner with the wife and children, and we're gonna sit down in front of the amazing race together. I was hoping that the calipers would suck out a little cleaner. You can see I got a bit out of them, but brake fluid is messy, and I anticipate when I undo the union bolts that more is going to spill out from somewhere. Kind of annoying, but it is what it is. I will note, however, if you do get any drips or spills,
have some soapy water, something ready to spray it with right away. The sooner you get water on it and dilute it, get it washed out of the way, the less chance you're going to have of damaging paint or something. Since, I don't know, maybe other people have better luck than me or just neater workers. But, yeah, there's always drops that drip for me. I've got a rag ready just in case, but I'm going to undo my union bolt. My union bolt out of the way, I can undo the bolts that mount the caliper. With the front brake strained and the caliper off, I can go do a similar thing now to the rear. Master cylinder reservoir is under the bodywork on this side. So I'll do the same thing, take the screws out, suck out the fluid, try and suck anything extra that I can out of the bleed nipple, and then I'll pull the caliper off. So to take off the rear caliper, it's really just those two bolts, because this is a sliding pin. Well, you take off a cover and then the bolts behind it, or pin, whatever it is, and then this bolt. But since I'm going to take this pin off to inspect it, I want to loosen it first. It's on there tight. We'd have to. Just a little plug. Need to get another angle. I need to prime my brake discs. Oh no, there they go. I've got a ridge built up on my rear caliper. Oh hey, there goes a lot of brake fluid. Wonderful. All right, now that I've got the calipers off the bike, the first thing I want to do is take the old pads out. So there is a little clip that's in here. Take that out of the way. This pin will slide out, and then they can be removed. I don't know if my brake kit comes with new shims, so you want to keep your shims just in case. They're not too bad for life yet, but they just don't seem like they're performing very well. Okay, I'm going to slide this body off here. It should have slid a little more easily than that, so I don't like that, but we'll figure out what's going on there. And the next thing I need to do is get my air compressor, and we're going to pop the pistons out. You do want to be careful not to use too much air pressure. Right now I'm using a rag to absorb it, and those both popped out just fine. I use a little electrical tape on the end of my fitting just to create a better seal. I've had some really tough ones and needed that. This one, it didn't seem too necessary. So I'll work my rag out. Now I can inspect my pistons and seals. So I've got the rubber bushings that were on there out. Just going to try and get this spring out. Trying to work it out without put too much pressure on it anywhere. Come on. There it comes. All right. I'm pretty happy with the way the seals look. I think I'm still going to pop them out of there because I'm going to clean all of this up. If I was a richer person, I would have just bought new seals and done them all while I'm doing this. But unfortunately, I have to live on a fairly tight budget. So I have to make do with everything that I can. All right, there is caliper 1 stripped down, so I'm gonna get this thing cleaned up. All right, so we have a saying in my house that it's not clean, but it's cleaner. So I've cleaned up everything for the 1 caliper as well as I'm gonna get it, and I'm gonna start my reassembly process. Some clean brake fluid in here. This one is the brake fluid seal. The wider one goes in to the bottom. Well, I shouldn't say bottom, but the lower portion. Can be a little tricky to get in, especially if you're wearing gloves. And I don't wear gloves very often, but I'm trying to wear them more. Come on, sit in there. Okay, there we go. Once you get it started, it's not too bad. And this one is just a little dust seal that sits on the outside. It's supposed to keep other crap from washing back too far. That one was a little easier. Okay. This way. This guy clips on the end of this. Wrong side. Actually goes on the wider post. There we go. Let's see what should do next. All right. This is going to be a little tricky to force through there. You can use this. That worked. All right. And then this one clips on there. New brake pads. Oh, I should make sure I've got the right side because they are right and left-handed. Yes, I do. Okay. Shim. Shim. Now I've got slide guide, glide slide guide. Cool, cool. So right there. And this one's going like that. Yeah, I can. Ooh, come on. There it goes. Okay, so that is caliper 1. And now I get to repeat the whole process with number 2. Okay, the 2 front calipers are cleaned up and rebuilt, and now I get to tackle the rear. Those are looking pretty thin. A little tricky to extract this bushing. I'll come back to that in a minute. There's not a bit here. Well, that spring clip does not want to come out. Oh, I think I see it. It's hooked on the sides. What's the trick to getting you out? There it goes. Okay. No, I just need to. I can get it. Alright, that one's looking kind of crusty. We'll get it all cleaned up. Okay. Yuck. Alright, so that one's all apart. And couple fewer pieces on this one. Get this one all cleaned up. And then we'll put it back together. Got the rear caliper all cleaned up. So now it's time to assemble that one. Squeeze on another one of these gloves. Oh, I didn't finish cleaning the seals yet, but that's okay. Do that. So for the seals, I am just cleaning them in some clean brake fluid. So with this clip, it is designed to hold the outside pad in place and allow the inside one to move with the caliper. So it's got these little pins that clip. That's why the one side is narrower than the fat side. All right, I think I figured out how to do this. Got it started on the one side. I have a blunt instrument that I can kind of use to, I hope. There it goes. There's that side seated. And that side. All right, good, good, good. Next, we have, this has got to go back onto the bike. This is what's going to hold our, do pads for the rear. Yes, once this goes on, it just pushes them in to hold them in. Seems kind of okay. Okay, I'm gonna go slip this piece back onto the bike frame, and this is gonna wait. Still a little surprised that that's all it does. It must push into something when it goes on. So when I went over there, I realized there was one other little shim that was still attached back there. So I need to clean this up yet. I didn't get my rubber boot on yet just because I decided I'm going to clean that up a little bit first. So with the brakes rebuilt, the next thing I want to do is check my valve clearances. So that means I've got to pull off my valve covers. This is the rear, the front is down there. So I've got to unplug my spark plug boots. I already loosened this one. It's one of the best things to have the factory toolkit for is the spark plug wrenches, especially on modern bikes where they tend to be pretty deep in there. So I'm just going to leave that in, cracked loose until I get the cover off. Same with that one. of my valve cover gasket wanted to stay with the head, and part wanted to come off with this. So, there are two different fasteners. There's a small one that goes on that side, and some bigger heads that go on this side. It's pretty obvious when you look at it. That out of the way. I'm gonna get the spark plugs out. And they look like they're in pretty good shape. But I expect this to look the same. Yeah, that looks about the same. Now we'll do the same thing on the front cylinder. The next two things we've got to take off are this cover so we can rotate the crankshaft, and this one so we can see our timing lines. This is an 8mm. And this one is a 10. So now, with the light in here, you're going to rotate this counterclockwise until we see a 1F centered in the window. There's an R. All right. There's a. Just going to bump it back here. See if I can show you this. I don't know if you can see that. There's a line and an F there, and they are aligned with the mark on the case there. And then we can confirm that they're in the right position by looking at the position of the cams. And the cams should be pointed, oh, they appear to be in and down. So I think I've got to go around another revolution before I can actually call that good. There's a position that the cam lobes have to be in, and basically you're 180 degrees out of time if you don't have them in that right position. I have rotated my crankshaft using a 17mm bolt in here, and I have the line with the F on it in my timing hole, which I don't know if you're going to be able to see this. You can kind of see the line. It looks like it might be a little bit blurry. There's a mark on the case, and it aligns with the line that's in the hole there. So you can double check your position by looking at the cam lobes, and these are facing out and slightly up the way they're supposed to. Not easy to see there, but they're in the right position. The other check you can do if you're really a little bit paranoid is look at the cam shafts. That line is parallel to the head on both of those. And then there's a mark cam disc. That's a 1F there and a 19F there. And those are aligned as well. So now to measure our clearances, you need a feeler gauge. On the intake side, it's supposed to be between 0.1 millimeter and 0.2 millimeters. So I've got that sort of fanned out there. I'm gonna start with the smallest one. And that fits in really easy. So we know they're not tight. Let's jump to the other end of the spectrum and see about the larger one. And the 2 doesn't fit in there, so that's good news. Looks like intakes are going to be good. Let's just get an idea where they're at. That looks like they are about 1.5 inches right in the middle where they need to be. Check out one more time. That's 1.5. Here's 0.5 very easily. 1, 8, 1, 6, now. Cool. Let me check our exhaust. Our exhaust is supposed to be between 0.2 and 0.3. So we got to start with 0.2. See how that feels. 0.2 feels fine. 0.23. 0.23 fits in there as well. Let's see about 0.25. I don't think 0.25 is going to make it. Oh, 0.25 doesn't want to make it. All right. Front end and exhaust are good, so I don't need to take the camshafts off, which is good because I didn't want to deal with the cam chain tensioner. Hopefully I'll have as much luck with the rear. With the front changed, or checked, I didn't change anything, we can rotate the to get to the rear. So we want to turn 90, 180. So we're rotating 270 degrees so that we can get back to the line with the R, which is right there. We'll do a similar check with our cam lobe position. These positions are slightly different than the one on the front. The book has a diagram there. It's pointed up and in more. So I can see that my cam lobes look like they're in the right position. My 1R is there. I do want to note you can't use the same back check with the marks on the end of the camshafts because those are set to the 1F as well. So with it all set, I'm going to grab my feeler gauges and check these clearances. Starting with my 0.2, I'm going to start with my fattest gauge. See if that fits in. Fattest gauge does not. So 2, upside down. That does not. What about 0.15? 0.15 fits a little side on that side. 0.13. That one fits. So 3 on 4 intake out, 0.15 millimeter, and 0.13. So I'm going to check my exhaust on the rear cylinder. Start. 0.020. And that one fits. So go to 0.23. 0.23 fits. This one there. And then 0.25. 0.25 fits there. That didn't fit there. 0.23. Oh, wait, 0.83. So not fit. I'm just this side. So again, these two are just a little bit tighter than everything else, but everything's within spec. I don't have to worry about taking off camshafts, and I don't have to worry about cam chain tensioners. If you do need to change them, honestly, it's something I haven't done. I was having mixed feelings. I almost hoped I would have to do it this time just for the experience, but I'm really glad I don't. You have to take these 6 8mm bolts off, remove this cap, remove this cover, relieve tension on the cam chain. There's a tensioner on the bottom on this side and one on the back on this side for the front. And then once the tension is off the chain, you have to pull out the camshaft, pull out the buckets, and get the shim underneath, measure them, and replace them. It's a lot more work. I'm glad I don't have to do it. So I'm just about ready to start putting it all back together. But the last thing I want to check before I do that is I'm going to, well, not really check, I'm going to clean my air filter. I'm going to take the cover off and blow it out. Airbox doesn't look too bad. I'm not surprised. I replaced it not that long ago. This is another thing you got to watch out for. Some people have had this little foam element just start to deteriorate and cause all sorts of problems. Mine is still in good shape, so that's good. So I want to do some general cleanup before I start putting all the bodywork and everything back on. But before I do that, I want to button up some of the more sensitive areas. You can see I've already got my caps back down there. I've cleaned up my valve covers as much as I can, and I'm just going to time lapse some of this initial put back together. But I do want to point out it calls for some Suzuki bond, which in the past I've used an RTV sealant just at these half moons, and I'm going to use some Honda bond, that I've got in the garage. The manual says Suzuki bond. As far as I know, it's all made by the same company, 3 Bond, that used to be around, but it's all the same stuff. And then I'm going to use a bit of anti-seize on my spark plug threads. But I'm going to switch it into time-lapse mode, and we'll see how long it takes me to get this initial stuff back together. So my next step is going to be to install my braided stainless steel brake lines. Got the 3-line kit for the front. Got my instructions printed out. So I'm going to start by just making sure all this stuff is here, reviewing the instructions once, and then I'm going to remove the old brake lines. So the first thing I've got to do to install these is take the old ones off. That's easy enough. Clipped in here. That's easy enough. When it comes down here, and this, a little hard to see, there is a block type connector there. So I think then the line to the ABS is on the back. I think that screws into that block. Similar thing here. So that's easy enough. Then we come down here. That's already disconnected. This is a little bit of a pain because it looks like I either have to remove the wheel or the fender to get to that. So I think I'm going to take off the fender. I'm not 100% sure which of those two options is easier. That's on there very tight. I bet that's Loctited in. All right, that doesn't feel like that wants to come off. I'm going to change plan. Take off the front wheel. We've loosened the punch bolt on the other side. Unclip the speed sensor. Undo this bracket. It does have something turned on the inside, doesn't it? And that Loctited too. Suzuki like to lock a lot of stuff down. Right, now that one. So I'm going to try and show you these connectors. So that is one right there, and then there's one on the other side. And they look like they will just unscrew out of the back of the block before removing the block from the bracket, which is right there. There's the one on the other side. Just
Gonna give these a little squirt with PB Blaster before I try and back them out. Just loosened the upper banjo bolt too, which should be the last one that I need. Yep. There. My brake line's out. I haven't tightened this on yet, but there's the new line at the master cylinder, and then it's going to come down through this clip. Now I've got to put the Galfer provided C-clip on there. And then this end will swing around like, this end will swing around like that, bolt in where the other one was, and that's where we'll screw in with the line to the master. The ABS brain. So, I'm going to wait until I've got a little olive part in before I try and do that. The little olive part I'm referring to is these, that's what they call them anyway. This little bit goes between the brake line coming from the brain and here. It's supposed to sit inside there. And I know some people have had trickiness getting it to stay in place while they're installing it. Let's see if I do. You know what? I'm actually going to undo the top. Get the bottom in first. That way I've got more slack to play with. This might be a little bit easier if I didn't have bar risers. I didn't get the extended kit. Should still work fine. Factory bars worked fine. It feels like it went all the way down. Cool. All right, let's get that top off. That is line A installed. All right, we're gonna try and get another one of these little olive things in there and get that attached here. That feels like that went all the way on. Now, it tells me I'm supposed to reuse this and get it onto line C, but it is pretty unclear how one is supposed to do that. Oh, okay. Never mind, the plastic part splits open. All right, I've got that onto line C.
just gonna clip in there. It was a little tighter before. I wonder if I actually want to put something in there as a little bit of a spacer. Yeah, I think I am. Okay, I got a little square rubber in there, so it's a little snugger now. Not super tight, but it's a little bit better than it was. Back over on the right side, I just have to install these clips, and tells me the bigger one is supposed to go up here. This line feels longer than it needs to be. Weird. All right, it tells me the other clip is supposed to go right there. With the brake lines installed, I'm going to put the front wheel back on. I am going to put a little bit of a glue Loctite on the bolts for this. Now we've got to hook up the lines so that washer. I gotta wait to tighten that all the way until I get the other side on too. All right, caliper on the other side. Onto the rear caliper. I've got that rubber piece in, and I'm just going to put a little bit of silicone grease on the sliding pin. And that is supposed to just slip in there. And then I think I just need to pinch my pads up a bit. Yeah, to get it to fall into place. Okay, I'm going to put this one to 8.5 pounds. There. Right, where's it back on? It's almost 8.5. And then we just have this little cover plug that goes over that. So I'm going to try something that I haven't done before, which is a reverse brake bleed. Where I've got a big syringe, and I'm going to try and force the brake fluid in from the bottom. I'm going to start with the rear just because it's a little simpler. But before I do that, a little bit of Teflon tape on the nipple will help seal any air from leaking out along the threads. So now, with that on there, and it's loosened about a quarter turn, I'm gonna put this piece of hose on there. See if I can get this clamp to clamp down. I want the clamp because the hose doesn't feel like it's quite snug enough, and I don't want it to blow off. All right, that feels secure. So now I'm going to try and fill up my syringe. I want to get this snug enough that I can push out the air. Let's see how this works. Just going to apply a slow, even pressure. Watch for any signs of leaking. I can see it starting to come up in the reservoir. All right, I think that's good. I'm just gonna pull the phone off real quick and show you it's pushed up to the reservoir, right up to the full line. So now I just have to tighten that up and disconnect the hose, and then I can try the fronts. I think the fronts will be a little trickier, but we'll see. I'm probably going to try and do a little traditional bleeding once I've got this off, just to run a little bit of fluid through it. But okay, we're going to try the same thing on the front. Got the valve on that side closed. Got this one clamped on, and just about a quarter turn open. And we're going to try and push our fluid through. Not seeing anything coming up yet. I feel like I'm having to put a lot of force into this thing. Trying to work the brake lever a little bit to see if it made a difference. I think my bleeder valve had rotated to a more closed position because I just opened it up a little bit, and it seems to be moving better. Oh, just started seeing it up top. But at least the system is primed. Anybody who's put new brake fluid in, the toughest thing is always getting it started. If the system is primed like this, then it typically is much easier. Now, I think what I'm going to try and do is try and force those air bubbles out through the top by doing a better job of priming this. Okay, I've got it loaded up again, and I've got almost all of the air out of the line except for just this little bubble at the top. But hopefully that'll push all the way through. Now I should have a second syringe ready to suck out of the top. Okay, I saw a lot of bubbles come out at the top. So I think that it's about there or thereabouts. All right, I'm going to try a bit of the traditional brake bleed, which involves trying to pump up brake pressure from the top. It's not wanting to build pressure, but let's see what happens if I open it up. So the primary issue I was having was there was a big air bubble on the caliper, trapped on the top of the caliper on the other side, so it wasn't properly building pressure. It still feels like there's a bubble in there. But it's getting a lot better. We're going to call that good for the moment. All right, I've got to figure out how to get this reservoir back in there. I've got a hose here on the bottom. Seems like it was tougher to get out than it was to go back in. You don't see that very often. back in. Before I attach the radiator, I'm just going to put a little bit of a dielectric silicone grease on the electrical connection for the fan and for the horn. Radiator has, you remember, these plugs sort of clip into the back of it. So I'm going to try and get one of these. That was the tough one before. The other ones are far enough outside, but I think I can get them after the fact. That's what I'm hitting. There's one. Oh, that already slipped in. So I have one more of those clips to get on the other side. Before I refill the coolant, oh, I realized my battery died. Still coolant coming out of there. Crazy. Yeah, my battery died while I was finishing up the radiator install, but I don't think you missed much. Just torquing that to 9.5, so very light. Yeah, I think all you missed was tightening the radiator hoses and clipping that on. So now I get to fill it up. Start with the reservoir. And then moving over to the radiator. It should take close to 2 quarts. But as I understand it, the bleeding process can be a bit of a pain. Once you got it filled to the top of the radiator, I'm supposed to rock the bike back and forth. I've got to back the camera up here a bit. Hit this side. See how much more she'll take after that. It's got to be getting close because that's almost 1.8 right there. In which case that wasn't so bad. I've only got to leave it once or twice, but after I get it all back together, I'll have to start it, run it for a bit, check it again. That time it didn't really go down like I did that. Just because I don't want to dump it out. I'm going to throw the cap on there. Back this up again. That's still up at the top. All right, we're going to call that good until I run it. Next on the docket is getting the fuel tank back on. Right, with it up in the air like this, we can get, let's see, this one. So the one at the front is just a breather to bring air into the fuel tank. The one back here is the fuel overflow. Gonna get some dielectric grease, put that on my electrical connector. I always have a little trouble with the quick disconnect for the fuel, but see if I can get it from the other side here. All right, with the connections made, can drop back down on its seat. So the tank is back on. I got these 2 bolts tightened down, so that's where the front cowls clip in. I'm holding off on putting that one in for now, because right now I think I'm gonna roll it outside and wash everything that I can now that it's all buttoned up. Well, all the critical systems anyway. aside from the top case, there she is all back together. So, yeah, I was hoping to get a little test ride in, but I'm being called in for dinner, and the girls want to watch a movie, so tomorrow.
So my initial test ride with the new brakes, pretty bad. They were both really soft. I couldn't get either of them to, I could barely get the bike to lock up, even on a flat level surface. So I had to go back in to recomplete them. And I think, I don't know for sure, but I think that I got a bubble trap inside of my ES motor. Clear that out, I had to get the brakes to lock up. But I couldn't really do that on a flat level surface. They were that bad. Like even if I jammed on the brakes, they would not lock up and trigger the ABS. So luckily I have a steep hill in my neighborhood that has a manhole cover that is not flush to the road surface. So it's got a bit of a drop off on the other side. And coming down the hill, hitting that fast, would allow me to lock it up. After locking them both back up, I got back into the garage and refled. I actually did a full reverse bleed again, and then flooded again. And now they're fantastic. I mean, they're so good that I was joking that I almost wanted somebody to pull out in front of me so I have to do an emergency. Okay, so we got off the street. I don't have to worry about a car behind me right now. I'm at a park right now. Going to the back parking lot. Let me just show you guys what a couple of stops look like. So that's front brakes only. And I can't express how much better it's stopping now. I'm gonna loop around. So my new brake discs have shown up. So I'm gonna go ahead and take the rear wheel off again. The first step with the rear wheel is to take the speed sensor off. This has a magnet in it, so you want to be careful not to bang it on anything because magnets can be demagnetized if they're banged around too much. Then we've got a 24 millimeter nut on our axle, and the other side's a 22, but I've just got a big crescent wrench to hold it. And I'd like to loosen these slowly. So I'm always a little bit nervous about galling potential. Sometimes you can loosen it without having to hold the other end, like I'm doing right now, which is nice. Little chunk of 2x4 just to help support the rear tire while I push out the axle. Watch your spacers. Going to want to just kind of roll forward a little bit. We'll get the spacer out of. There's that spacer. I can shift this over a little bit to the side. There you go. Once the spacer is out on the other side, then you can get the chain off the sprocket. Roll the tire back. There we go. With the rear tire off and resting on a bucket, I just want to compare my
replacement disc to the one that was on there, and that looks good. So I believe that Suzuki recommends a high temp Loctite on these, so that probably means I'm going to need some heat to break them free. So I'm going to give them a little hit with my old friend blaster, the penetrating blaster, and then I'm going to warm them up with the propane torch. And the blaster is going to ignite a bit. I don't want to get them super hot, but warm them up enough to get the... Might need more than that, but I'm just going to start with that for now. And see if my 6mm with a bit of a braking tube on it will get that free. Yeah, I think they need to get hotter. Wish I had a heating gun, but my heat gun broke. Let's check another one. So I got one, and yeah, I do need to get them a fair bit hotter. Let that get nice and warmed up. And then once it is, I'm hitting them with the impact gun. With the disc off, and since it's exposed, it's a good time to clean the wheel. So I'm going to take care of that real quick, and I'll be right back. So the wheel cleaned up quite nicely. Now we're going to lay in our new brake disc. We want to make sure that the side with the recesses for the bolt holes is out. And I've got some new high-strength thread locker. Or high temp thread locker, excuse me. Where did I put my... I'm just gonna get these started real quick. Make sure we're all centered, and then we'll torque them to the right. It's always good practice working a crisscross pattern with just about everything. And now we're going to make sure they are torqued up to the correct spec, which is 16.5 foot-pounds. Doesn't seem very tight to me, but I guess the thread locker is doing what it's supposed to. All right, that's the rear wheel disc. Before I put the rear wheel back on, I just want to point out these linkages. The other thing I didn't get this on video, but as I took the bolts and bushings out of the 3 lower mounts, the one to the shock there, the one to the dog bones, and the one to the frame. Actually, sorry, I didn't do the one to the frame. I did the upper and lower dog bones and the one to the shock, so that I could inspect the bushings and needle bearings and make sure no water had gotten in there. I've had that happen with some other Suzukis. They were a little bit older. I was hoping the design was better, and it seems to be. But it's always worth checking to make sure that that's all working as it should. All right, let's get this rear wheel back on. So I won't lie, I'm not looking forward to this. I have had some trouble in the past getting the rear wheel back into position. Something about the way the rear brake carrier works on this bike that just wants to fight me between that and the spacers. So, got it sort of roughly fit there. Get my sprocket on, and I've got this spacer for that side. That's not right, wrong spacer. This one goes on this side. This spacer for this side. I've got to try and roll this forward a little bit. Chain around the sprocket. And get the caliper over the disc. I've learned that just don't rush it. Take it slow. Tends to do a little bit better. I think I might want to just try and spread those over a little bit more. Okay. Get my 2x4 under there. All right. That wasn't too bad. I've had that be a lot worse than that. All right, so with it roughly in position, I'm going to wipe off my axle, put a little bit more grease on that. So far, so good. Hang up just a bit, so I'm going to get a rubber mallet, persuade it a little. Okay, good. That is on. Square bracket. Snug our nut back up. Before I get that all the way tight, I just want to double check the chain alignment. That still looks good. And go this way. All right, that's going to take it a minute to bed into the new disc. I'll have to be careful for the first ride. And we'll get speed sensor put back on. Cool. That's the rear. So for the front discs, again, I've got to take off the wheel. I loosened the cap on the brake master reservoir since I know I'm going to have to push them back a little bit. And I have a rag wrapped around it just in case there's any leakage or spillage. Front tire is a little simpler, but different. I'm going to start by loosening this pinch bolt just a bit. And then I'm going to loosen the axle, just so I'm not trying to fight it when it's up in the air. All right, and with that loose, then I've got a speed sensor on the front, similar to the one on the back. And now, with those things loosened, I've got a jack there that I'm just gonna put under the front end to lift the front wheel up a bit. Doesn't need to be much, and it doesn't take a lot of effort, so it's not like there's putting a lot of strain on the crankcase or anything. I do put it under the crankcase instead of the exhaust system. If you've got a bash guard, that would be even better, but I don't have one of those. So now I'm going to draw this axle the rest of the way out. Oh, you know what? I think I might have to pull the calipers off. Forgot about that. Yeah, I do have to take the calipers off, otherwise the wheel won't clear them. All right, now it's out easily. Got a spacer there, one on the other side. We're gonna get to work on these brake discs. So my new brake disc is a little bit different in design than the stock ones. The stock ones had 5 mounting points and then 8 of these free-floating discs. The new one still has the 5 mounting points. They all look to be correct. But it has 9 on the outside instead of 8. I don't anticipate that being an issue at all. So it looks like they're going to work fine. I'm going to do the same thing with the heat and impact gun to get the other ones off. This one does not have a recess for the heads, so I don't think it matters a lot which side goes in, but I'm going to put the side with the rivets here to the inside. So once again, with the discs off, I'm going to take this opportunity to clean up the wheel before putting the new ones on. All right, that's all cleaned up. So we're going to do basically the same thing here with some new Loctite. Snug them all up and then torque them. Other side. And that is 2 new discs on the front tire. All right, back at the front end, slip the tire into position. Get our spacers lined up. Excellent. Rest that there for a second while I setting up for that again real quick. Before I torque everything up, I'm just going to lower it back off the jack since everything's in place. Now it says 47 foot-pounds for the axle, but that honestly seems a bit like overkill to me. But if that's what the book says, we're going to see if we can get that. I've taken the wheel up many times and just gotten it tight to what feels right to me. Oh, okay, well, I guess that's about what I would have done anyway. All right, and then it wants the pinch bolt to, I believe it was 16 and a half. Where did that 12 go? And now, got to get my calipers back on there, and those will go to 28. calipers are a little tricky because I'm going to a wider disc, which means you need to open up a little bit. But you don't want to open one too far and have it compress the one that you haven't put on yet. So let's see how I did here. There we go. All right, those are all torqued up. The last thing I need to do is the speed sensor. And that is new disc brakes. I had mentioned that I wrapped the master cylinder with a rag. You can see a little bit, it looks like maybe a little bit of fluid squeezed out. I'm not surprised. So I'll get that off there, cleaned up, get the cap back on. So when I took the towel off, I just used a corner of it to wick up some of the fluid to get the level back to the level, back down to where I want it. So I'll get the cap back on and this job will be done.
So it's all back together and it's braking great, and as you can see I picked up a new microphone since the video earlier, just because I realized how bad that sound was. Hopefully this is better. The other reason I got it is because I am going to go for a ride this weekend. I am riding down to Portland. I get to go to the One Moto show at the Zidell shipyards, and I'm super excited. It's a big custom builder show. They've got live music and food trucks and art and beer and motorcycles, and you know, what more could you want? I'm looking forward to trying to meet some folks that I watch on YouTube and listen to podcasts, and hopefully make some connections. Got some business cards to hand out and hopefully grow the channel. I hope that you've been enjoying or getting information, good information from these videos, enjoying maybe some of the other ones. Maybe this one wasn't the most entertaining. But please consider supporting the channel. You know, like, comment, subscribe, share, all those good things. And if you've got the means, yeah, I'd love it if you would buy me a coffee. There's a link in the description down below. But thanks for watching. Cheers, y'all.